Welcome to another video from Koiro, and this is the second video in the data-Tronic series, and this was the video that was never supposed to be, I think. This is the third take of this video. Both the last times I shoot this video, the footage was destroyed. Once it was a hard drive crash, and the second time, I don't know what happened. The codec screwed up and it was not readable. So, the third time is the charm, I think. And the last time we visited data-Tronic, the Norwegian PC and Amiga and Commodore supplier that had the broadest appeal for the hobbyist market back in the 80s. And the last time we visited data-Tronic, it was the 1988 Catalogue. And there are some more catalogs along the same line as that one, but this time we are entering into 1993. And this is issue 5, and this was released 6 times a year, so this is the end of 1993 we're talking about here. As you can see, this has the form of a magazine, and actually data-Tronic tried to branch out in the magazine business, and they actually presented their catalog as a magazine. So this is kind of a 3-in-1 solution for this. They actually had the magazine and they had the Norwegian Home Data Club, as this was supposed to be the membership magazine for, and it was the catalog. And as we will see when we enter into this catalog, all these 3 areas is overlapping during the whole magazine, really. On the front here you can see that data-Tronic is still featured with the same logo. And they have all the contents that's normal for a computer magazine back in the day. And they had this side where they describe the Norwegian Home Data Club and what's featured as a member. And as we can see, the biggest advantage of being a member in the Norwegian Home Data Club is that you get this magazine 6 times a year. And the contingent to be a member of this club is the same as if you pay this magazine and buy it 6 times a year. And they also had this subscription for Game of the Month that you had to, if you was a member of this, you had to actually say that, no, I don't want the next month game sent to me. And here you can see they're starting to advertise some of their products, and this is advertised as a selling point, and they have not bothered to state that you can buy this from data-Tronic, because that's pretty much implied when it was in this magazine. There are a few occurrences of outside advertising, as we will drop into later. And this was 1993. And Sound Blaster still was the name of the game when it comes to sound cards. But they also sold this rip-off sound machine card, where they actually bundled this with some small speakers and a joystick for 1200 krona, and that was not a bad price. And they sold the original Sound Blaster Deluxe version for straightly under 1000 krona, and the Sound Blaster Pro and Sound Blaster 16 was 1500 and 2000 Norwegian krona back in 1993. Yeah, and they sold the same motherboards and expansion cards and scanners and whatnot. And they had this letter page where you could write in and ask questions and so on. And here we can see one of the rare outside advertisements that was in this magazine, and Databua was actually one of the last repair places for Commodore equipment in Norway when we was entering 1993. A test for the Amiga CD32, you can see they have this slightly typo up here that makes this looks kind of strange. The Amiga CD32 was actually selling quite good in Norway by 1993, and I remember that it in some cases was a short supply of this as they couldn't get enough of those into Norway. And this is the third branch that data-Tronic had branched into, and that's they was selling what was called back in the day for public domain software. Public domain software as an expression is pretty much gone today, but it's what we today called open source, shareware or freeware, where there are some distinctions, and public domain was very often what you today will call trialware or freeware. And you was not allowed to earn money from selling other people's stuff like this in public domain, but it was allowed that you could charge a small fee for the time it took you to distribute the floppy disks and the price for the floppy disks themselves. And here you can see they sold 285 public domain fonts distributed on 6 diskettes for 250 krona. And I think they actually got slightly bit advance on this too, not just a small fee for copying the disks. When they were selling this as a magazine and when you put it got it in the mail, they had a front cover disc for both Amiga and PC, and they didn't supply 2 discs. When they sold this in the newsstands, they took one magazine for Amiga and the other magazine was for PC, and they stuck them on the shelves so that each other magazine was Amiga or PC. And they also sold this. Remember, this was back before the internet. So the way to get sheets and other walkthroughs and stuff for games was actually to look into computer magazines, or you could buy these leaflets here, and this was just copied leaflets, and most of this was some gamers that had played through this and made the charts themselves, and in some cases this was just rips off from magazines that had printed this before. And here you can see they was actually supplying this catalog over public domain software. They sold you a disk with a list of 9,000 freeware programs, and at this time a floppy disk cost you about between 7 and 9 krona for a HD floppy disk. And they sold the Mitsumi CD-ROM player for 3,000 krona, and I remember selling this exact same kit at the time, and this price was not bad. I remember a year later this was dropped, so they were selling this for about 1,500 krona, 1995 krona, and so on. But at this time, 3,000 krona for a CD-ROM drive, that was not a bad price. And this was also to keep the readers happy and continuing to subscribe on the magazine, was to have these programming courses that you split into parts, so that you had to buy each magazine to get the next part of the course. And every computer magazine that had a hobbyist audience did this back in the day. And this was programming in C, and this was Visual Basic. And here they featured the freeware version of Visual Basic that was a pretty limited version. And they also have moved on to selling Packard Bell PCs. In 1998 we follow them selling computers from Victor and from Commodore when it comes to PCs. And more listings for public domain for Amiga. And this is a programming course for Amos. Amos was actually a great deal back in the Amiga world. It was pretty good rapid development environment for programming. And I remember I first looked into Amos, and I didn't use more than an hour to get a pretty useful program out of Amos. So I kind of liked Amos back in the day. And they also have very many different versions of this, and you had a compiler and you had some other extras. And here you have advertising for members. And this is no different than every other magazine back in the day. It was mostly people who wanted to get in contact with other people to swap computer disks mostly. And we all know what was contained on these disks. It was not freeware but cracked games and demos, as was the norm back in the day. You had gaming tips, and this was wandering from magazine to magazine, so every one of these tips that was supplied in this kind of magazines, they was at least published once before. Yes, and some competitions, some Game Boy accessories and games, Super Nintendo, Mega Drive. So they was actually branching out from not supplying only Commodore equipment, but also equipment from other vendors. Game Test, they sold of course floppy disks and disk boxes. Printers, they sold off their old stock for half the price. And they also sold labels. And here you can see one of the rare advertising for other suppliers, and this was the Game Shop Norway. They sold this Game Boyish golf simulator. I've never seen this in real life, so I'm not sure what it is. Yeah, and some accessories for the Amiga. And no-name discs, as I said, they were selling them for 85 krona, and in 1993 that was a good price, but not an exceptionally good price, because I remember I actually sold this Gold Star brand in 1993, and I sold the Gold Star floppy disks for, here they're selling them for the HD version for 150 Norwegian krona. I sold these for 10 krona, and I sold no-name disc for about 70 krona. So not the best prices at this time. And some other extras for the Amiga, frame grabber, floppy disks. And they also sold English magazines, but at this time in 1993 they had all these magazines in the newsstand, and the Norwegian chain of newsstand stores that was Narvesen, they was supplying every one of these, and they actually had a pretty good setup of foreign magazines and mostly English. So it was mostly English but also American titles that was sold in Norway. And they was kind of pricey, but of course they had to earn their money on this. And this was the reader's top 10. You could write in and suggest what game should be on this top 10 list. More advertising. The Amiga 600 package, and in 1993 it was just before Commodore went bust and they had to sell out their stock. So the price on the Amiga 600 had dropped to 2,490 krona. And that's pretty cheap for a 600. And as we can see, the price of the 1200 had dropped pretty much by this time also. So they sold it for 4,000 krona. And for 500 extra you can get this package. So this concludes the series for the data-Tronic. And I don't remember seeing much more of them after Commodore went bust in 1994. So I think this is one of their last magazines. If anyone knows more about that, give me a notice and I will be happy to make a follow-up on this. But this is the end of the Amiga area, both in Norway and in the rest of the world. And without the Amiga and the equipment that you sold to the Amiga, data-Tronic was just another supplier of PC goods. And as we all know, this is a market where the competition was a race to the bottom for everyone. So I don't think there are many suppliers that was around in the early 90s and had the PC as their main product that's still around. Because that's a market where you just couldn't win because the competition was so hard. So, thanks for watching. Please hit subscribe if you want to be notified when I publish another video. See you again in the next video.